With all the focus that Mario gets from Nintendo through getting around 10 platformers and a couple spin-offs that put him in the spotlight, it has been real easy for the audience to completely forget that Luigi existed or only remember him as Character 2 guy. But that's why the launch of the GameCube was such a surprise when it popped up with a Luigi-centric game. Yes, the brand new spin-off title Luigi's Mansion was used to highlight the new power of the GameCube console, coming out with completely new gameplay and an entirely new genre. This game is pretty much what you'd get if you asked someone to repaint a Resident Evil game with Kirby's cuteness, because no matter if the game is good or bad can take away from the idea that Luigi's Mansion is a horror game. A unique idea coming from the company of series formulas was a great way to kick off a new console and get people invested early. When the players finally got home and ripped the cellophane off, it was revealed that the game they were about to enjoy is a weird affair about Luigi being tricked into getting trapped inside a huge mansion in the middle of nowhere overseen by some crazy guy named Professor Egad, who's been spending his last 40 years as a ghost fighter and decides to help out Luigi with getting Mario out of another jam. Yeah, it seems that Luigi can only have his own adventures given if Mario is already about to die. I give Luigi's Mansion a lot of credit for going in a new direction and putting in a lot of iconic design elements, music, and characters, because Nintendo put in the time and money to make this game happen. Yet the thing holding it back is that Nintendo didn't flesh the game out enough, and like Majora's Mask, the world the game takes place in doesn't really make sense. The idea was that the Boos were the ones who released the portrait ghost that Egad wants to recapture, and they're the ones that created the fake mansion they trapped their brother in. But that can't happen because the Boos were trapped in a cellar cage before Luigi even got there, and it's even more impossible because later it's shown that the Boos were most likely captured inside of portraits because Egad is able to make a portrait out of the Boolossa's ghost, which was just made up of 15 separate Boos on the roof. So the game is basically saying roll with it, we're making this up as we go along. For the most part it works because Luigi's Mansion manages to be a fun comical horror game that, again like Majora's Mask, gets a lot creepier if you look beyond its surface details. The big thing is that you start realizing as you capture these portrait ghosts is that they happen to be the ghosts of actual humans, which means that all of them were murdered instead of being medical losses. There's the entire first area where 3 family members are sitting around doing normal things like reading and sleeping before Luigi barges into their rooms, and that suggests a goddamn serial killer. Then there's Shivers and Melody, who share a story of unrequited love and affection-based anger between them. And then there's the gut punch story of Sue P, who's a ghost of a 7-year-old girl that suggests a backstory of either being killed in bed or drowned. And here Luigi is, capturing all these character ghosts with whimsical abandon as he whistles along to theme music that the mansion is producing on its own. It is certainly one of those games that gives you a lot of fill-in-the-blanks narrative to chew on, but while that's going on, Luigi is certainly enjoying the user-friendly feel of his brand new Poltergust 3000. The device Egad gave Luigi that allows him to have a chance against all the ghosts in the house and introduces some brand new gameplay into the Mario series. In basic terms, it's a pseudo top-down shooter where the idea is to use the vacuum cleaner to stick Luigi to a ghost and then have Luigi pull back on the ghost to suck it into the vacuum cleaner, and the challenge is found in how the ghost drags Luigi around the room while tug-of-warring with the ghost that creates a hectic, fun kind of combat. The rest of the game is filled with puzzles and the usual key hunting to further explore the mansion, but mostly the game is a hunt for the game's boss ghost, like this is some baby's first Dark Souls. Each boss ghost has to be beaten by being scanned with Luigi's Game Boy Color ripoff for a hint on how to make it vulnerable, and then Luigi can suck it up like any other ghost, and later on, Boos are added to the mix where the same thing has to happen, except these guys can run into other rooms, making them even more annoying to catch, since you have to poke everything in the room that it's in to find them, as the Boo radar on the Game Boy Horror is about as useful as the Find My iPod app. The other thing that the game has is some Wario-style treasure hunts where you can find all the gold, gems, pearls, and dollar bills in the house to help win the game's best ending, which is all for naught because this game is one of those ones that make getting the high-end rank so ridiculously hard that even if you are the king of completionists, you'll end up getting at most rank D at the end. I got rank F at the end, which means that even with 30 million money things, EGAD was only able to build a one-room house with that money, which means that he obviously spent the rest on a one-night stand with 25 high-class hookers. And while Luigi's Mansion is fun, unique, and incredibly iconic to come out of Nintendo, the thing that shoots it in the foot is that it's oddly short. The playthrough that I did for this video was one where I 100%ed all 23 of the game's portrait ghosts, and even with some extra screwing around to look for a couple of the golden mice, the game managed to clock in at an amazing 5 hours. I remember the game being a lot longer when I first got my GameCube, but I guess that was just nostalgia telling me that it was one of the great 6th generation classics, which it still is. I can say that Super Mario Land was a need-to-have original Game Boy title, yet that's not going to make the game's 1 hour playtime any less of an issue. It is a good thing that Luigi's Mansion didn't overstay its welcome, since forcing the game to be longer would have probably ended up with Nintendo doing some copy-paste development, but with the high number of plot holes that Luigi's Mansion ended up not dealing with, and the great setting choice, there was definitely some potential in this launch title to have a more involving world that Nintendo ended up not using, and thinking that just being quirky and weird on the design document was good enough. I closed this review convinced that Luigi's Mansion was one of the better games to use as a launch title, since it's unique, weird, and ended up with the same level of background storytelling that Majora's Mask had through its ambiguous plot, and while I'll reiterate that it's one of Nintendo's classic games, the fact that the game is so short means that there is a lot of areas that could have been explored by the game's development more left on the cutting room floor. The game could have been lit up with a large amount of scattered documents telling the origins of the portrait ghosts, the booze, and the mansion itself to make the game even spookier than it already is. Yet instead of that, the game gives the player all of the plot blanks and waits for them to fill it in with the tiny amount of fluff text the game actually has. Thankfully, the game got a sequel at the very least, which won't be in this series for quite some time, but until then, I'll finish this video with a final scoreboard. And a chilling victory for gamers. Woo! See you next time.